Ben Shapiro, I saw you mention me on the Iced Coffee Hour podcast.
I'd be interested in debating destiny.
I think we should have a debate over who the next president of the United States should be, and I bet Jubilee would host the debate for us.
This is the 113th episode of Middle Ground, and we want you to help us decide what the next 113 episodes will be. Join our Middle Ground Patreon community and make Middle Ground with us.
The gay community is oversexualized. Can the agreeers please step forward?
The gay community, because, it's based off of our sexual attraction, it has a very easy time going into a space that's all about sex. To me, being gay is a lot more than who I sleep with, It's an experience from when I grew up. The movement used to be about love, but then you go to a pride parade now and you're seeing old men with their genitals out.
I think everybody has a right to express their sexuality in the ways that they do it. So on those grounds, I'm not offended by these old people doing what they're doing. But I do agree with that. I think one of the biggest challenges when I was coming out to my dad, who's Muslim, it was my sexuality, being gay, isn't just about my sexual lust for other men. It's more about the spiritual connections, the in-depth things, me as a whole complex person. And I do think that our experiences and our existence has kind of been trivialized by the over-sexualizations. I don't think it's inherently an evil.
And the over-sexualization is apparent in the apps that we can get. I mean, you can literally have sex on demand, or you could find it in a location wherever you want. Certain businesses are actually keeping doors open because men are having sexual relations in the bathrooms, and that's inappropriate. I mean, we want our privacy too, just like women, and now we can't even have our privacy because a small sect of men ruin it for us.
Yeah, and that was really frustrating too. When I came out the closet, it was I had this innate pressure, I have to download Grindr, I have to be super sexualized, and that's really bad on our youth because although everyone has sex, I get that, but why is it that our community is so hyper-focused on that?
I haven't attended many Pride events because of that reason, and I was able to go to Portugal and there was this queer retreat, and it was the first time I felt safe and secure as a queer person because it wasn't sexual, and I could have these relationships with queer men, but there's no expectation to be sexual.
Yeah, and we see it at the bars. I mean, it's little go-go.
You go to a gay club, you're getting grabbed.
You are.
You're getting hugged.
It's
You're
an
getting
expectation to be
groped.
sexual at the clubs. And I mean, I avoid them at all costs at this point.
Dang, what would Middle Ground be without you, Ragini?
But it's not just me. It's a team effort here.
Cheers to that. Which is why we want to thank Milanote for sponsoring this episode.
Milanote is a creative project management tool that lets you collect notes, images, videos, tasks, and more all in one place. Whether you're planning a season of Middle Ground or planning your next creative project, Milanote has different templates that you can choose from. Our team even used it to have everything in place for this season of Middle Ground, from casting to research and brainstorming. Which was simple enough because Milanote allows you to share your work with others and collaborate with them in real time.
Oh yeah, talk about teamwork, making the dream work.
And better yet, Milanote is available for free with no time limit. Sign up using the link in the description and start your next creative project.
Thanks so much to Milanote for sponsoring this portion of the episode.
Now, let's get back to the video.
I think it's easy to generalize our community as over-sexualized because we're in it, so we're focused on it. But if you look at the straight community, I think they're doing a lot of what we're doing, especially now with more sexual liberation becoming a thing for them and their community. I also think that we have to remember, we've only been legal, as in decriminalized in our sex for 20 years this year. That's crazy. Every year up until 20 years ago, there's going to be an explosion of people wanting to embrace their sexual liberation. And then you look at things like the AIDS epidemic in the 80s, that took away so many people and it made us afraid to have sex. So this, in my opinion, is a way for us to overcome stuff, and we definitely need to find a balance.
The basis for making us illegal has always been based on sex. Right. And so being openly sexual in any way at all whatsoever is inherently a protest, inherently subversive. I mean, there are sexual things that happen in public that I'm sometimes uncomfortable with, but that doesn't mean that all the things we see and all the things our friends see represent the majority of experiences. A huge portion of LGBTQ people exist in zero public LGBTQ spaces.
I think you draw the line of, you do this in the comfort of your home and you can show affection in public. I don't know if we need to be like indecent in public. I don't know if that would be considered.
How do you define indecent?
I'm in
Like
a
when
20-year relationship, a 20-year monogamous relationship with my husband. And I say husband even though we're not married, but we're not groping each other in public. We can peck, we joke around. When we walk into a room, they know we're together because we give. Yes, absolutely. We show extra affection at home in the privacy of our home or in the privacy of friends' homes because we feel comfortable in that.
And you know what that though is your specific preference for public affection. There are a million rom-coms out there with heterosexual people, and a funny thing seen in that movie is straight people having sex in some public space.
Correct.
I
still don't think that's appropriate.
I don't necessarily do either.
I don't
necessarily do either. I'm just saying we're talking about personal preferences.
I know, but I think a lot of times in this, and I don't disagree with what you guys said, but a lot of times what I'll hear is like, well, the straight people do this, and I always grew up saying, I clean my house before I tell somebody else to clean theirs. I am not straight. Right. Therefore, if straight people are doing something wrong and gay people are doing something wrong, I'm going to address the gay people that are doing something wrong, and not
addressing like the people who have been setting the stage for all of us to like follow suit with. You know, like we live in a heteronormative culture. Like everything that we see is based off of the way that they exist.
The whole idea of over-sexualization and things like that, I think the danger in it is that for so long it's been weaponized against us. So we're always kind of like under this magnifying glass of like, oh well, can I hold hands? Can I kiss this person? And then, you know, I don't think we necessarily have to like mimic quote unquote bad behavior simply because that was what was served to us.
Pride is still necessary.
Yeah, I think Pride's necessary, but we need a PR revamp. Yeah, I think we need a rebrand. I take a lot of issues with what I see at Pride parades now, just because, you know, as we've discussed previously, I think that it's a little bit over-sexualized. We're celebrating essentially sex rather than love. And we have people running around riding bikes with their balls out in front of kids. And for me—
Where are you seeing this?
Yeah,
what prides are you going to?
New York City and Seattle, both of those had naked people walking the streets.
San
Francisco. One of them was on a bike. I saw the video of him on a bike. I didn't want to see it.
I would never have my balls out on a bike. That sounds dangerous.
No, me either.
That's dangerous.
Me either, but it's the fact that it is allowed because we have this shield of it's pride, don't mess with gay people because of our history, which is granted. But people are afraid to look at our culture and say that's not acceptable, because if straight people were walking around doing that, it would be a totally different discussion.
I don't think that's the majority of the issue, though. I mean, the reality is that being visible, period, is vital.
Absolutely.
We can be visible without being sexual.
None of us will be alive to see the day when heterosexual people and homosexual people have equal agency in what's allowed and what's not allowed in the public space.
Me personally, I actually think Pride is very necessary. I love it. I wouldn't say Pride parades. I feel like you guys are leaning towards like the parades itself. Pride is like liberation, you know.
Just proud of who you are and
yes,
loving yourself,
and
accepting yourself.
Yeah, accepting yourself and having the people around you in your circle really accept you. It really tells the future generation, like, not only is it okay, but look how far we've come. Yeah. At 2011, you know, the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy was abolished. I'm in the military, and had that not been abolished, I would not be able to be, you know, a minority, be openly gay, and still be able to serve my country.
Yeah, and I want to just say thank you for your service before I move on. And that's a prime example of the Pride that I would love to attend, is someone who highlights service members, gay CEOs, people who are successful, who are contributing to society. Celebrate who you are, love who you are. But the Pride is no longer about being overly promiscuous because we're not allowed to. We don't need to overcorrect to the point that we start to get backlash. We need to correct our PR.
But I still think we're looking at a small group of the people that are at Pride.
But the small groups, they speak the loudest.
No, but they don't always. You said you saw 2 people naked. Like
no, 2 separate instances of groups of people who were naked with their butts out.
Exactly.
Right, exactly.
Around the world. And
but
like
that
you were
gets
saying,
highlighted.
Looking at specific things with a level of shame, and then have to look at like where are we shameful within ourselves, and why is that something that we should be ashamed of in general? Like, why is nudity shameful in general?
I agree with you about nudity itself is not sexual. I don't think so. Because I have been to new places and it's not sexual, but when you make it sexual, that's the problem. It can be indecent exposure at some of these things, and Pride needs to not be complacent and address it.
This should be interesting.
Yes, heels. Come on.
I know. I'm alone on this one. But the reason I'm alone on this one is because I organized one of the most successful prides in my community in 2016. I invited groups that were outside the norm, like the NRA and the local GOP, including the Democrats. Because for me, it was important that this event reach the entire community more than just saying we are a sexual being. We wanted to educate the people. I was told I was never allowed to help them again because how dare I invite a hate group like the NRA when all I wanted to do was arm LGBT people and educate them on how to protect themselves. Because as you guys said, there are those people who would hurt us. I live in a very, very red community. Okay, Mike Garcia is my representative.
Santa Clarita?
Yeah, Santa Clarita. But I dress like this to galas, big government galas, realtor galas. No one has said anything to me, and in fact, all I get is positive affirmation that, hey, you're living your best life. And I say, it's not really necessary because I can walk down my street in heels and braids.
In California.
Yeah, you are so privileged in that way.
Yeah.
In Republican-controlled California,
A recent
yes.
poll of Californians found that 35% of Californians feel that homosexuality should be discouraged.
I've done this
so great
in
for
Michigan.
You that you're in an LA
I've done this in Michigan. I've done this in Tennessee. I've done this in Missouri.
And you've
I've
walked
done
around
this
like this in all those states.
Yes, I have.
I will say
yes,
that
I have. And I have had absolutely no issues. I've walked into a backwoods bar in the middle of Nashville where it was a double wide that had been converted to a bar, and it was one of those record scratch.
What does your husband look like?
My husband is 6'4", and he's
and there's your
a
protection.
man. That's not my protection.
That is
I walk in that community dressed just like this in these heels, and not only do I not get hate, my husband gets more business.
I'm so happy for you that this is true for you. I really am.
Yeah, totally.
But the reality is that you represent a small minority of LGBTQ people and how they actually experience life in America.
To your sense of freedom, which is so admirable, I think that those things are built on blocks of people who probably did feel that pride was necessary. So it's a beautiful thing that we can have the freedom to,
change our mind.
admire that.
And I think we all want everyone to feel the way that you feel, like you don't need it, but that's just not the case.
My name is Sean, and I am a Patreon member who is asked to read you this next prompt. The LGB should be separated from the TQIA+.
Saying they should be separated is not saying that one is, less important.
Yeah,
So I do want to start with that. But I do think that the LGB is very specific, rooted in science. It's very clear as day. You have lesbian, gay, and bi. Main difference between male and female, we all know what that is.
The reason why I stepped forward with hesitation was because I think that there are such lived differences in experiences that we experience. Although collectively, I think that we all know the collective experience of being a sexual deviant. There just is a difference in lived experience that I think is important to talk about and acknowledge, and that's my grounds for agreeing with perhaps a separation.
Mine is very different. To be clear, the science is very solid on identities other than gender assigned at birth being valid. Science is very clear, robust, there is no question that it's legit. We, as cisgender people, do a really bad job of standing up for people who aren't cisgender. I call out the fact that cisgender queer people are treated differently than non-cisgender queer people, and until we do better, we don't deserve to have the letters be together.
Much better grounds.
So, I agree with what you're saying, but I think in general, this conversation can become very hostile because it seems like, I'm like, oh, I don't want you to be a part, I don't want you to be my friend, I don't want to be with you, be next to you, be seen with you, and that's not the case. One is an identity, and one is a sexuality. And that's just the simple difference between the two. Eventually, as both groups are fighting for their own personal interests, those are going to not work cohesively. So one is going to be quieter and one is going to get taken advantage of, et cetera. And it's not that we can't support the TQ+.
Right.
I just think that they're two vastly different things.
I think that you oversimplify identity versus sexuality, though, because there are tons of men who identify as straight who have, on occasion, with regularity, once in their life, sex with men, which is why...
They're bi. I think once with men, sure, experimenting, but I think if there is a guy that's identifying as straight that sometimes dabbles with men...
He might identify as straight, but he's not.
You're bi.
So two things. First of all, there are lots of gay men that we can call gay all day and all night that occasionally have sex with women, and we don't question whether or not they're gay.
They're bi.
But are you entitled to titling someone else's? Is
that
up to you?
The title is an objective fact. If you sleep with men and women, then you are bi.
What if someone that we're talking about doesn't agree?
Yeah.
If you don't agree, that's fine. But the fact is, you sleep with men and women, so you're bi.
Flat out.
Can we not talk about who we're having sex with? Just for this problem.
Because a lot of what's in the media today is sensationalized content about, targeting children. A lot of it is valid, and some of it is not. But a lot of times, it's gay men that are doing it, and trans people are getting blamed for it when it's really gay men in drag.
Right.
And because the letters are together, people don't know the difference. And even when I first started like coming out, the first thing that somebody said to me was, "Are you going to transition into a woman?" And I'm like, "Wait, what?
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with my sexuality. There's nothing wrong with doing that, but because they're together from an outsider's point of view, optically, I think if our goal is to educate the populace on who we are, then we need to make a more clear distinction between LGB and TQ+."
No, I don't disagree. I think it's just important that if we do that, we don't erase any of the validity of the people who are in the group that we're not a part of. And also, what I wonder about in this context is some people are born intersex, so they have sexual organs of both genders. Right. How do we identify under the criteria you guys have identified? How would we label them? Because if they have both and they have sex with only one gender, what are they?
It's such a rare case. I'm not
But
saying
it does
they don't
exist.
exist.
I don't think the exception makes the rule.
Yeah, like there's people born with 11 fingers.
I think as human beings, we like to package things that we can develop a palette for. We like to make things more palatable. We like to establish clear-cut rubrics for what is and what isn't a person. I think that's just the natural human tendency.
It's how our brain categorizes.
But I think that what separates us from the apes is that we can give credence to these differences and create pockets of space, at least for a discussion, if you don't necessarily agree or whatever.
I think it would be an incredible disservice to the transgender community who gave us a lot of the beginning for us to fight for our rights, a separation from them, now that we have our rights. That's just so privileged of us. Like Marsha P. Johnson threw that first brick at Stonewall, and because of her—
She didn't throw the first brick.
Or the second, or
she got there at 2 a.m., first of all, and second of all, Marsha P. Johnson was also a gay man, so when she was fighting for those rights, she was fighting for gay rights because she was gay.
Was she a
I
gay
totally
man because
agree.
of the time that it was?
She didn't transition until long after Stonewall actually happened. But that's neither here nor there. We're here to defend. I'm here to defend the TQ being part of the LGB. Yes, there are some gay men that will overlook what's underneath the belt. That happens. But to say that you have to like them, that's wrong. And I also have a heart for the Q, because we can't clearly define the Q. When I was young, it was questioning. Now it's queer. Queer was a slur once upon a time. But I look at those people who were former homosexuals who now live a heterosexual lifestyle. They're never going to be accepted by the straight community, and they're not going to be accepted by our community. So I've put them under the Q umbrella. Those straight people who do have sex with the same gender on occasion, they would fall under that Q. They may not fall under the B. So I have a heart for them because they do exist in our spheres. We just can't put them on a pedestal above any of us because we're all in this together.
I also don't think that they should be divorced because I'm a huge disability advocate. I have a mental health condition. It's very different from someone who uses a wheelchair. We still have a disability.
What you're getting at is that we're a minority.
Thank
They're a
you.
minority. And the more that you take apart those minorities, the harder it is for us to fight for our rights.
The queer community is already divided. Since the queer community is already divided, I think separating the two is going to make them even more divided and a lot more animosity between queer and T with LGB.
It's a double-edged sword because in one way it's like, okay, well, we don't want to divide too much because we don't want to lose our united front against heteronormativity or whatever. But then at the same time, if we can't teach the nuances of our various identities to a heteronormative society, then it's like, okay, well, aren't you gay, aren't you trans? Like it's all the same thing to them. So I think it's a balance between being all awash and then also noting that we are uniquely made up of all these different experiences.
But I think if we had a stronger community, like that wouldn't be the case. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Like if you don't like me because who I am, I know that my brother right here, my sister right there is gonna like me and they're gonna support me. And that's all I need because it's all about my personal experience and what's in my circle. You don't need to be in my circle, but because it's within my own circle that I'm getting all this, belittlement and hatred. Everyone just wants to be accepted, honestly. Like that's the way it's looked at.
And can't we all, to some extent, identify underneath the Q? Your attraction maybe has shifted in some way to different types of men. Like things are constantly evolving and in my opinion fluid. So to kind of force ourselves even into the LGB is to sit within the binary that doesn't help any of us anyways.
But I think all the Q stuff is just a matter of your personality.
Right.
Like we had so many different labels and you like this kind of person, then you're this sexuality, when reality just goes back to you're gay, straight, or bi, and then your personality.
But our community is not doing itself any services by categorizing ourselves. Bear, twink.
Yeah.
And then you see it
yeah.
on the apps, on the profiles. Oh, no fats, no femmes, no this, no that. We're already segregating ourselves.
We can still be a community while having a better way of explaining what the differences are between the letters. Because, I mean, even in our conversation today, you guys are talking about a lot of anti-LGBTQ legislation. And as if I was a gay person watching, I would think, oh my gosh, like they're coming for my rights, they're coming for my rights. But a lot of times that legislation has to do with the TQ+. And I'm not saying I agree with it, we don't need to go into the legislation. All I'm saying is that the narrative that gay men are being attacked when other letters are, not giving any merit to the attacks, it is confusing and it's harmful to young gay men and their success because they're force-fed this narrative that they can't.
That's totally fair, but there's been over 560 legislation bills put into some sort of vote, right? And over 220 of those have been for transgender. That leaves, what, around 300 plus, not just at the TQ?
I think that there's a lot of nuance when it comes to the laws that we have to talk about, but either way, when you say over 500 LGBTQ+, the distinction between the two gets lost, and I don't think that it's...
I passed one of those laws. I passed one of those laws in Nebraska that protects children under the age of 18 from receiving gender-affirming care and hormones, because I've seen...
And you're proud of that.
Yes, I am very proud of that.
I am so ashamed of you.
Because I have friends who had their first experience with affirming care.
Can I finish?
But can I finish?
We're sitting here
But
with.
can I finish?
The stuff you felt as a child.
I'm sure a lot of us
is so
disagree with him,
sad.
but let him finish because we both have things
We can
to say.
all talk, but let's let.
Because when I passed this legislation that you say targets LGBT people, I sat next to a young girl who her first experience with this type of care was a double mastectomy at 15. She's now 19, doesn't know if she'll be able to. It's actually very common. Because
how common? I want a number. How common?
Can I finish?
How common?
Can I finish?
You passed
You're
the law.
asking me a question in the middle of my statement.
You passed a law that affects so many kids from feeling like themselves.
Yes, I did.
Transgender
I'm proud
kids.
of my law.
That's unfortunate, and I'm ashamed of you.
If that's what it's going to take to get you to stop so I can finish my thought, I appreciate that.
All right, you know what? I'm going to shut up until you finish, but I would really like to say something when you're done.
Sure. The person that I testified with, who their experience was a double mastectomy.
Let him finish. Let him finish. Let him finish. Let him finish.
People talk.
Okay, that one person was one person in Nebraska, but I know a plethora of other people.
Hold on, let him finish.
I know a plethora of other people in other states all over this country.
Are so easy. I know a plethora of people all over the country.
Can we not do this? Like, what is the? Can we let them talk? You're gonna get time to talk.
I don't appreciate it.
I know. I'm furious too, but let him finish.
He's pissed off more than you, and he's quiet. Just let him. You're gonna get your point out. Just let him talk.
I'm good. Thank you.
Just let him talk.
Okay, let's pause.
You say how many people? You say it's a small subset. But for the people who it affects them for the rest of their lives. A decision they made as a child will affect them for the rest of their lives. This person will never feel their sensation on their chest. They don't know if they're going to ever be able to have a child, and they know they will never be able to breastfeed. They will never be a woman in the regular senses. And this is happening more and more because we're conditioning our young people to say, hey, this is okay, you can make these decisions. As a senior in this community, I have to say, wait a second, you guys are kids. Wait till you have your whole lives. Let's talk about this.
Honestly, shame on you for not going after the actual facts. I realize your anecdotal experiences move you, and I respect and appreciate that. But let's be perfectly clear. The most permanent thing a kid can go through is puberty, first of all. So when you deny a kid the opportunity to pause puberty, we're just talking about puberty blockers.
Which straight kids do all the time.
All the time.
All the time.
Yes, since the 80s, kids have been prescribed puberty blockers for a variety of reasons. And the law you passed prevents that. So you steal from kids who would like to be able to pause the ability to further. Fewer than 3% of people who do any kind of transition regret it and go back. Fewer than 3%. Finally, I want to make this very clear. I'm not done. You were so mean to everybody else who want to talk to you. My turn. There has been really robust standards of care laid out by all the leading medical associations that has been in existence for a long time that is science-based about guidelines for these things. But to be clear, the guidelines are very specific about this is supposed to be the parent's decision with their kid, with their medical provider. What you did was rob all those families of choices. Your opinion because you believe you know better than science, you know better than parents, you know better than people who even do know themselves. You're going to prevent them from having options because you personally have a problem with something that a couple of people and some other people you're aware of knew.
It sounds
None
like
of them are
something within
statistically
himself.
significant. Maybe you've got dozens of people you know of, hundreds. That's a teeny tiny little sliver. You will never know or know of all of these people, and yet you've decided for them, and shame on you for it.
I think we all can agree, though, that even though he's passed his legislation, over 18, you don't care what they do.
I don't care what they do.
You're just more so protecting the kids.
He's protecting
that
kids he
are
doesn't
going
have.
His laws more so protecting those kids that are just tomboys, tomgirls, that are just they're being force-fed this idea like, oh, I'm gay, maybe I'm a girl, and then like they're just like pink. They like are more feminine and it's like, oh, actually transition. And
I don't think it's that simple.
And
I just hate that this is such an absolutist discussion on both sides because it's like you guys are like, no, there's nothing. No, don't interrupt me.
I'm not being absolute.
I'm not being absolute either.
Okay, but I
Please
just
don't put
don't
words
think.
in my mouth.
Okay,
I'm disappointed that someone
Can you let me
is
talk,
proud
please?
to sit
Can you
here
let me
and
talk?
pass a law that harms children
I got
when
it.
we know that our
we
queer
know your
community
point. We got it. We
is
know your point.
so harmed already.
All I'm saying is that your guys are not making space for the people who have gone through this process and regret it. I personally know someone in the same situation that you were in, and I'm not sitting here arguing for either side because I think this is a very nuanced discussion. It used to be a 2-year process. Now it's 6 months. Those things are changing because the capital and the motive behind it is now, which I'm sure that you guys on this side are against capitalistic, healthcare. That's pushing it. And those guidelines, yes. There's a lot of money to be made in gender-affirming care.
A lot of money to the doctors who are
1.6 million per child that gets on it. That's throughout their lifetime. That's how much that
There
farmer
are
makes
so many
from
other
it.
things that kids get that make people more money.
I
than
understand that, but you're not leaving any room for nuance in this discussion.
Actually, I would argue that you guys aren't leaving room for nuance because you make a decision.
I never said a statement.
Well, okay,
on it.
I apologize. And for those of you that I have been mean to, I'm sorry. I love and respect all of you as people.
I don't think it's mean.
Nuance
I just think it's
is
a lot.
valuable, and that's why we leave it up to the parents and the medical professionals and the individuals who are making these decisions. There are people who get hair plugs and regret it. There are people who get nose jobs and regret it. There is no such thing.
we don't
There's
give
no,
hair
I'm not-
plugs and
there is
nose
no-
jobs to kids.
there-
But
no,
kids can get
the
nose
point is-
jobs, can get breast jobs. Of course, kids are getting this all the time.
Oh, he's done. She's waiting on us.
Sorry, I think it sounds like we're not really going to find a middle ground between some of you.
We will have to hug
But
later.
can I actually sort of like wrap it up into a middle ground moment?
Yeah.
Go for it.
I think this is exactly going back to the point of why there is a separation, because it's a very lived, different experience than just being a cisgendered gay man. That was the whole point of the prompt.
This is everyone's opinion, and no matter like how frustrating it can be, going and attacking people, like it was just a lot. If that was me, like I would be so mad and I would just go off. So I commend you for really like holding your composure.
And I just want to apologize because that's absolutely right. And I broke my own rule in being fired up in the things I said to you, and I'm sorry. That's not how you deserve to be treated.
And I ultimately do side with my liberal brothers that I don't agree with the legislation, but
It's not malicious.
I see where you're coming from, and that exists, and people that live here, they do, they have that. But I do disagree with legislation, but I don't necessarily have to personally attack you.
Drag shows are too sexual for minors.
I think it's important to not put a blanket statement over everything.
I was just gonna say that.
Because I know already when they step forward that we're gonna get the Miss Doubtfire example, and then it's gonna be like, oh, well, why is that okay for kids and drag is not? Love a good drag show. I frequent them all the time. Most of them are not appropriate for children. Most of them, not all, but most of them. There are instances that are circulating on social media that represent a small minority of drag shows where kids are present and then it's over-sexualized, people pleasuring themselves, wearing outfits that are representative of genitalia. For that reason, I would say that drag typically is not appropriate for children. Yeah. Do I think it needs to be legislated? No, because I don't trust the government to legislate it responsibly, but I do trust parents to use their better judgment and know that when something is typically sexual, it most likely will be, so just don't take your kids there.
Yeah. And I disagree with when there were folks trying to ban drag. You can't do that. We have the First Amendment for free expression. I think drag should be able to be celebrated and just kind of dress however you want. I think it is good, I think it's great, but then sometimes there are instances where it's not, and we have to talk about that rather than being ban drag or no, it's completely safe. I think we need to have that middle ground conversation on what that means.
As a child who wore my sister's clothes, I wore my mom's makeup, I put on their heels, I did all the things, I just explored my, who I was. feeling comfortable expressing yourself and being around drag could be like, for a kid like me, if I saw that it was okay to dress up and nobody was like shaming me, maybe that could be helpful. But that doesn't change the fact that the majority of drag shows that we see today are sexualized.
We have to even
jokes,
start with
yeah.
drag as where its origin comes from. Here it happens mostly in bars. That's where these queens are getting their training. I myself, in my time, have helped a drag queen organize a show that was family friendly. And I use the quotations because she actually took it out of a bar. She's like, we can't make something family friendly and still produce it in a place where they serve alcohol. Right. So she actually ended up renting a theater, asking people to pay for tickets, and she put on a produced show where they came in from backstage and they would come on stage like you would expect to see a Broadway show. And she made sure that she told anybody that was gonna come in and perform, you don't grab your breast, you don't grab your crotch, you don't shake, you don't do, we have to make sure that it has to be available and consumable for the general public, because we don't know who's going to be walking through our doors, and we have a responsibility and a duty to make sure that we don't confuse children, we don't upset people, and if we want this show to be a success, we have to make it palatable for as many people as possible.
Okay, well, so right here.
We don't say the same thing about pop stars. It's literally the same thing, you know, and I think that it's hyper myopic, zoned in because we are queer. It's an easy way to go after us. I don't think most people that don't like drag shows or angry about drag shows actually care about drag shows or have ever even been to one. You know, I think when you go, you said majority. I've not been to all the drag shows. I can't speak for the majority, but I've been to my fair share in New York and LA, like places where the queens turn out. They put on a show. It is not about being sexual. It's about being smart, funny, witty. They make their costumes. They do their makeup. It is art entertaining. I don't think they get enough respect for what they do.
And it's sad that drag is kind of being painted that way for everyone when there are a lot of people that are doing beautiful work. But what do you think when it does
I think people
cross the
who
line
are
of being
like
sexual?
inherently afraid of drag as an art form then go to the one thing that they can, which is like, oh, the sexualization of the minor. Like, but which I think, you know,
such a dog whistle.
They're not taking down all the naked statues that are like all over Italy and like in the Catholic Church, like, you know what I mean, like naked babies. If you're gonna like say, well, none of the like sexualization of children and none of the inappropriateness, then you have to go after it all.
And I will get with you guys on that point where it is hyper-focused on the drag queens when it is a bigger conversation of what is acceptable and not acceptable for children, especially pop stars. When I've been to Beyonce's tour 4 times this year so far.
Lucky you.
And you need to go. While I'm there, I love the experience, I love the show, but I'm also fighting in my head being like a super big fan, but I'm like, okay, this is really inappropriate for children. But no one's talking about that.
Because it's Beyonce. Because it's Beyonce.
There's so much footage out there of adult women with their minor daughters going to a Justin Bieber concert and being out of their minds about him being in any way sexual. They respond when he does a sexual thing. This is a norm. It's just that in this case, it's about queer people and norms don't get to apply to us.
Right, and I think that just art in general has the potential to, you know, blur the lines of what's socially acceptable and what isn't. That's what makes it art. So it's important to remember that all forms of art, and I speak on this on my platforms too. When I have kids, they're not going to Hooters. I'm sorry, I'm not taking them there. I'm also not taking them to a drag show, and I'm not gonna take them to a Sam Smith concert either. Right. So, and that's not because that art is bad, it's because I'm not comfortable with my kids being there. But if the government is in the business of
question for you.
Yes.
You said that you feel like you maybe could have experienced something that was good for you by seeing drag when you were little.
Right.
So and then you just said you wouldn't take your kids to
because the majority of drag shows that I've seen, I wouldn't find appropriate. I'm not going to run the risk. I'm not saying that there isn't a drag show that would be good for a child. I never said that. I'm saying that from my experience going to drag shows, I'm not going to run the risk of taking my kid and putting them in an environment that I don't deem appropriate.
Do you want kids?
I mean, yes, we have a responsibility to police our own community. If a drag queen comes out from backstage into a bar and someone has their child, that drag queen should be like, stop, whose child is this? Why is this child in this bar? Under 21? Excuse me, they're going to lose their alcohol license, especially in California.
Although I do think that there are wonderful drag shows that are amazing for adults, also may not be appropriate for children, but it's not inherently the art form that determines
I agree.
that.
Yeah, I mean, the vast majority of drag shows happen in places that are 21 and up. So it's not as if there's a rash of kids being taken into bars and seeing, but I think it's really important to note that the argument about whether or not a certain art form is inappropriately sexual or not is a tale as old as time. I think drag is being targeted because it pings that part of people who aren't sure what's okay. Adults take their young kids to Hooters all the time. Adults show their kids R-rated movies all the time, but those are their personal choices. And here's the thing. It is not unknown what's developmentally appropriate. The American Psychological Association, the American Association of Pediatrics, there's tons of well-researched guidance on this. This is not an open question. There's no need for these laws, but also it's not accurate to say that most of them are sexualized, because how in the world would you be able to empirically prove that?
Totally.
I would date a trans man.
Every trans person has their own experience of what trans is. If that trans man still had downstairs, then sure, because that's the reason I'm gay. I'm a gay man because I'm a male with male body parts that likes male body parts.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Would that change, let's say if you met someone and you were attracted to them based off of what they looked like in clothes, and then you found out that their genitalia didn't match what you had expected or assumed, would you still not be interested in them?
It would hurt, because I would be interested in them. That's happened before. I can be interested in a person, but at the end of the day, I'm gay. So if I go downstairs and there's nothing there, or there is a female body part, I can't perform.
So then you wouldn't date a trans man, would you? Trans man is woman transitioning to man.
Oh shit, see, it's so confusing.
Yeah, so it's like you wouldn't, because if they didn't.
It's trans man or trans woman?
Trans man.
Which is?
Woman transition to man.
Oh,
That's
shit,
why
no,
it's
I would
trans
not.
man.
No.
Okay.
You can turn around if you want.
Okay, yeah, no.
Okay.
So, reset.
I think for myself, I've never had the opportunity, I would say the privilege. Personally, it is one of those things where, like, what I look for in a partner is really what they bring to the table in terms of, like, intellectual conversation and just the way they make me feel. It doesn't really matter what you have going on. If we have good chemistry up here, like, that's not gonna be a problem at all, and it shouldn't be a problem, and no one should really be conformed or confined to what they have in their pants.
I was dating someone and they were transgender and they didn't tell me, and we're like 2 months in and we actually decided to actually do something. I don't think that's fair for me though, because you're not giving me the opportunity if I still want to continue, because that's important. So that's why I don't blame anyone or have any animosity if someone doesn't want to date a trans person, because they still have their preference. And if they are gay, it's not just gender that's important, it's also their sex that's important too. And we don't want to disregard sex as well and what their sexual identity is, because that is important to someone else.
I also think, just based on the idea that you're talking about with sex, there's so much more to sex than just penetration or sucking on something specific. I think that there's a lot of different ways to enjoy sex and being sexual with your partner. I also think, for us to sit here and think about the trans experience is completely unfair because we don't go through it. Right. And so for someone who is trans to think about disclosure is safety. For me personally, I think that love is such a special thing, and to be able to find it in any capacity would be a gift. And I think to close yourself off from possibly meeting someone who you are physically attracted to because of what just is in their pants is really doing yourself a disservice.
Can we go around and say what we love about each other?
I think we all have a sexuality for a reason. That's not discounting the lives of trans people. Like, I think they have their rights. They should be alive. Like, that's totally fine. Respect to them. But I think we're, at least some of us here, are gay for a reason. Our sexuality is reduced to what's between the pants. That's literally the only reason I'm a gay man.
We're talking about like what's in someone's pants.
Yeah.
Would you date a trans woman who still had her penis?
I'd be open to it.
So would that make you still gay though, if she presents as a woman?
It would make me...
Make you bi with an exception?
Well, your
Make me
definition of gay is
yeah.
defined by being attracted to
just be like, I just want,
a penis.
that would be a very, very feminine man.
When it comes to men, obviously there's what's in your pants, but them transitioning to a man, they're still identified as a man and they still present that masculinity that most men, if you want to be honest, most cis men can't produce.
Right, yeah.
So if me wanting to date date or open to dating a trans man, does that not make me gay?
I would say that you're bi with an attraction to masculinity.
Or pansexual?
These conversations are so tough for me because it's like, I truly believe that you love who you love and it doesn't matter. And we categorize things because that's natural for the brain, but there are nuances and there are exceptions. Honey, I'm as gay as the sun is hot, but
Girl,
I like,
okay.
you know
Right.
what?
I
I like what I
wanna
like,
feel
and I'm
it
not
slap in my
gonna
face. I'm so
invalidate
sorry.
somebody else's sexuality
Totally.
by saying, oh, you're bigoted for not wanting to do this, because that, and it kind of goes back to our other discussion where the TQ and then the LGB, sometimes those issues can intermingle and then cause other people to feel invalidated just because I don't necessarily want to date somebody with a vagina.
I find this conversation interesting because to me, I don't see the point in it. Because like, we can argue that someone who is a gay man will date a trans man. It's like, who cares? That's up to them. I know that we have different.
Thank you.
I think it just sucks though that gay men are being called transphobic for not wanting to date a trans man.
Well,
I think that's a little too far.
I think we can all agree that's wrong.
That's
I don't think that's transphobic at all. If that's not your preference or if that's not who you like, then that's fine. Can't nobody get upset at you.
Agreed.
But I think it is one of those things where like, you know, sometimes it is not what you say, but how you say it. You
That's
know,
fair. Yeah.
I've gone to like gay clubs and trans people have been there, and you know, we're all supposed to be like under one umbrella. We're all supposed to, especially in a gay club, like you would think like, you know, everybody's just kind of hyping people up, but it's not the case where it's like, you know, you step in there, pumps on, you know, wearing a skirt and you have like 6 cis gay men eyeing you down or treating you differently all because you're transgender. So it's not even a situation of, oh, I don't like you because that's not my type, but it's the way you go about it.
That's fair.
I only didn't step up because I've never faced this. However, of all the kinds of men that I'm into, and I kind of am into a wide variety of men, my assumption is I don't think I'll be sexually satisfied if my partner doesn't have a penis.
That's it.
That's it.
And that's good for you. For
Yeah,
you,
me,
that's fine.
For me.
For me, I have other plans.
LGBTQ topics should be taught in school.
You want to sit in the middle?
I think age appropriate for sure.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think it's nuance. It's age and grade. That depends on that. But I mean, there's definitely times growing up when I was in the closet in middle school, I'm like, okay, we're taught men and women, they get together and then they have a baby or whatever, especially like 9th, 10th grade. But like for gay people, something that doesn't exist. We don't like women. So like, what is my experience? I'm not reading it in a book. I'm not seeing it anywhere. I'm having to run to the dark corners of the internet. I'm having to experience all these things that they shouldn't just be going through. We should be teaching something at least. But
and it goes back to the
over
sexualization thing. It's like when people say are iffy about gay topics being brought up in school, it's like, oh, the sex. But it's like, no, like, right? Like, why can't we learn about wholesome relationships, like, you know,
and just
having good credit, like,
yeah.
you know, making good financial decisions, people of the same, like, just things that are so much bigger.
Well, yeah, and that's why I originally was hesitant to step forward because there is a fine line. People are talking about the Don't Say Gay bill or the Parental Rights and Education bill in Florida, which was up to grade 3. It's important for kids to know that
Haven't they changed that though?
Yes.
Have they changed it since
It
then?
goes up
okay,
to 12th
well then,
grade now.
Either way. Well, when it was originally up to grade 3, that's when I would say I agreed with it, right? Because I don't think that it is the government's place to teach my future child about sexuality. Now, hear me out, this is why it's a gray area. When teachers open the discussion to young children about sexuality and inherent sexual attraction, it puts them in a position where they could step on the toes of parents. And that's what I don't agree with.
I totally understand where you're going with sexuality. I totally understand what you two said, age appropriate. I think when you're talking about sexuality, that's like sex, that's in terms of like sexual education, sex ed. That's literally what they teach in school. So that
right,
those
and I'm
types
not
of
for
talks.
that either, which is the point I was going to make.
Okay.
I don't think, I'm a conservative who favors small government. I don't think it's the government's place to teach anyone's kids about sex. And I know there are kids that may need to learn about it because their parents aren't good parents, but I don't think that exception makes the rule.
And wait, that's good for you. Yeah. I'm sorry, that's good for you, but it's taught. With the way the world is moving now and the way that the community is just so open and so expressive, and the child is gonna see regardless. So like he was saying, instead of going to, you know, the dark web or, you know, just looking stuff up on your own and having no guidance, if you're gonna teach somebody or if somebody's gonna learn it, you rather them learn the correct way.
I can totally get down with that too. You want to have parental rights in what they're saying. My whole point is that it has to be all or nothing. We can't keep straight sexuality and then
I agree. I agree.
I'm the one, always the one.
Hey girl.
Always me.
Sorpresa. I'm just kidding.
I was listening in, and Clarkson kind of made the point that the government really shouldn't be in the business of teaching your children about your sexuality. No one taught us how to be gay. Who taught you how to be gay? Anybody? Was it the internet? Okay. It would have. Yeah.
My uncle actually, I didn't know he was gay.
So it was a family member.
Yes, I didn't know he was gay.
For me, as a gay man who grew up with parents who were very, very prudish, they had no idea. They didn't even want to have the conversation. I am that example that should have been taught at school, but I learned. I figured it out on my own, just like many of us ultimately do. I know as an individual, it would have helped me if someone in my own family, an uncle, a parent, For me, I think it's the government's job to start educating these parents, because the parents need to have these sensitive conversations with their children. The best metric for a child's success is the parental involvement. And what we're doing right now, where we're teaching the children about sexuality and completely not involving the parent, we're leading them down a road for psychological issues because they've got no support system at home. We're creating a school system that's supportive and a home system that they think is unsupportive. We live in 2023. Most of the people are very accepting. Parents are understanding, but parents have to know what's going on in their children's lives so that they can be prepared. And I think it's the school's responsibility to prepare those parents, not to have children have these conversations with parents, because children do not teach their parents.
How do you get parents involved when they don't support it though? Like I have a lot of really good friends who are educators and they want the parents involved, but a lot of their parents are coming to school already queerphobic.
Right, see, and that's the challenge. That's the challenge for the schools. It's not the school's job to overstep that unsupportive parent and then shelter that child, because now that child has created a two-world system where I feel safe here, but I don't feel safe at home, and then the state comes and takes the children, which is happening.
How do you feel about waivers? Like, how do you feel about schools saying, oh, we're going to teach your kid this, and the kid comes home with a waiver, like if they sign it, then you're okay with the school teaching it, but if the parent doesn't sign it, then they go in another room and the parent teaches it.
Yeah,
Are you
absolutely.
cool with something like that?
I would completely agree with that, yeah.
I just keep thinking about it as you say that is, I have a friend who had a great life at home until his parents found out he was gay. And then they shut him out. They kicked him out of the house. They still haven't spoken to him. He's in his late 20s now. And he was unable to get in-state tuition in college because they would not help him fill out the FAFSA, which requires him to have their tax information. And so would it be great to live in a world where A, it's possible to reach all parents and educate them and change them from being bigoted? Great. Would it be great to be in a place where that is doable? Awesome. But you know, I was groomed by a teacher, and it was only possible because it was not okay for teachers to talk about being gay, except the one teacher who went out of his way to make his room a safe space. And because he was the only teacher and happened also, separately from being open, to be a pedophile, he was able to groom myself and others. And so unless and until kids feel like they can be completely safe wherever they are, and knowing that changing parents is kind of an impossible lift, to be frank, not making it mandatory to create safe spaces for LGBTQ kids in schools is begging for disappointment, begging for failure. And to your point about learning about being gay, the ways that I learned about being gay, especially from the internet, I'm almost 40, there's baggage from that I still carry with me.
100%.
And so if I had been comprehensively educated when I was a kid in school, my life would be meaningfully different today.
I think for me, the easiest thing to look at is like where you have sex education, teen pregnancy goes down, right?
Yes.
Education is power. I think it would be something similar for queer people. Like if we had information about who we can be and how we can exist in all these different ways, it would empower kids in a way that they should be empowered.
And there wouldn't be billboards for PrEP everywhere.
Monogamous relationships are difficult to find in the gay community.
I'm a step forward on this one.
There you go.
I think it's difficult in today's day and age, and like just in general, like to find a monogamous relationship. You know, I started with experience at an earlier age. So I'm 22 now. I lost my virginity at 16. Me being 22, I know from all the experience with different partners and just having, you know, I guess my fun, I am looking for something with substance, you know? I'm at the age gap where a lot of, you know, people around my age, they want to have their fun. You know, they probably just lost their virginity 18, 19. Some people are losing their virginity now, which is fine, you know what I mean? So they want to experience life or hookup culture. And then there are some people who that's just what they want to do for the rest of their life. They don't want to be tied down. So it makes it very difficult because a lot of times even meeting someone, it's one of those things where they want their cake and eat it too, like, you know?
I think there's something to be said about a lot of gay men, and again, this is straight people do this too, but we're just talking about gay people that say they want monogamy, but they don't actually want it. They just want it for the person they're with, and that's a little shade to my ex. But anyways, no. But I think it has more to do with the fact that we are very focused on our pleasure a lot in our community, and we haven't really learned, not necessarily to repress it, because you shouldn't repress sexual desire, but we haven't really learned how to control it in situations that are particularly hard to do. Like if you're around somebody that you're extremely sexually attracted to, if you haven't, taken the time to examine yourself and make sure your actions correlate with the way you want to live, then you're going to cheat, or you're going to need an open relationship because you just have no capability of doing anything otherwise.
I think we're still healing from the generational trauma that came from the AIDS epidemic. I think a lot of people are still trying to figure out how to heal from that, and I do think that we have a big problem with substance abuse, sex addiction, and I think that needs to be addressed as a community. And I think as we start to look at why we are leaning into these things that are less productive for us on our regular lives, we can start to realize maybe this is part of that. I think whether it's monogamous or non-monogamous, it's a couple's choice to figure out what works best for them. I think we've become very married to the idea of marriage in general, where people are willing to get divorced and remarried and divorced and remarried, where it's you're not really married to the person, you're married to the monogamy that comes with that marriage.
I hear a lot of gays complain about this, but then they're looking on Grindr for a long-term relationship. I don't know how you expect to do that, and who I have talked to, they're looking in the wrong places, it seems like.
It seems like there's a need to have a monogamous relationship, and I think that's good because I have one, but since divorce rates are so high, I wonder if it would be best if people did share each other, not all the time, but it's you date someone, maybe you try something else with someone else. I'm not saying that's the right way. I just don't know, because some monogamous relationships work and some don't. I don't know.
I think love involves sacrifice, and I think sacrificing your desire for somebody else for the person you're with is ultimately what makes your love grow deeper. It's very hard for me to see an open relationship and think you're not willing to just commit to one person and just not be with somebody else.
But is that a Christian idea? Is that a heteronormative
No,
idea?
No, it's just an
that's a
idea
scientific
of me.
idea, because as a student of science, the most stable bond is a pair bond, period.
Sure. But a pair bond for how long?
It can be forever. I mean, my pair bond, I'm expecting it to be forever.
Is there nuance in that though? Because even as straight couples, there's you get in the 40s and 50s, there's swingers everywhere.
Oh, absolutely.
We did not arrive at monogamy through evolution. It's a combination of some things, and there are benefits to pairing, but there are plenty of mammals in the wild that don't do lifelong pairing. One of the leading drivers of divorce is cheating, and it seems to me taking that off the table is a great way to prevent that one pitfall. Some of the happiest same-sex couples I know are in open relationships, and they make all kinds of other sacrifices for each other, making space for each other in other ways. I think we might be best served by surrendering that one of these is right and one of these is wrong, because we put each other and ourselves in a position of an expectation of, I should want this, or I should want that, I should be this, I should be that. And if that's inconsistent with what best serves us, that's a recipe for a failed relationship, regardless of whether or not it's supposed to be open or closed. I just want to say that I really respect and appreciate all of you, and I even those of you that I disagree with vehemently, I see a lot of humanity in. And I also want to say, if I said or did anything that was offensive to anyone, I just want you to know, I really do respect the shit out of you guys.
Yeah, you guys are all amazing. I'm happy to see our message, even if we don't always agree. Right. The best part is that we each get to say what we want to say, and that's going to help move our community forward. That's really what this is all about.
I definitely respect all humans. I just feel like you have a lot of energy and passion that I wish would be used to help move the needle for all of our community in a better way. I just get nervous that sometimes in these red spaces, they will use people like you to push their agenda to harm one group of people, and then that will grow and grow and grow.
But I think they do that on both sides.
Yeah, but who's to say that I'm not using them, you guys? Remember.
Okay, can we have that soundbite?
And the shoes match too, really?
Did you think about a more and laugh more?
I did. Girls never
Never man.
I was gonna say.